Hi, my name's Christian Clark, and this is the Nourished YouTube channel, podcast, and maybe an eventual Instagram page. Not quite sure if we'll get that far, but we'll see how far we get with this thing. Before we start with the rest of the episodes, I wanted to share exactly why I'm starting this and what I'm hoping to accomplish with starting all of this. To get straight to the point, I felt God tell me that I needed to start a podcast on the gospel. It was just a few months ago where I felt God prompt me. I remember sitting down with my wife and my mom, and we were sitting around the couch, and I was kind of struggling with, okay, what are my strengths? Because I feel like I dabble a lot in a lot of things where I like to golf. I used to play football, and I like to play guitar, but there's not one thing that I can really put my finger on that I'm real good at. There's not that thing that I'm a master at. And I was sitting down with my mom and with my wife, and we were at my parents' house visiting there down in Salt Lake, and I was kind of vulnerable with them, and I opened up to them, and I just asked, I was like, do you feel like I have one strength that you can point out? Because I know I dabble in a lot of things. I know I can get by with a lot of things, but I feel like I don't have that one skill or one trait that just pops out. And then kind of sat there for a moment and pondered on it and really sat with it, which I appreciated. And eventually my mom says, Christian, you're not going to really like what I say because I know that this isn't what you're looking for, but I think you're a good listener. Yeah, no, that wasn't really what I was looking for. I was hoping, I'd find some sort of skill that was easily noticeable that I could, because kind of the whole background of me wanting to find different strengths and different skills is because I wanted to use it to help other people. And I didn't feel like there was one thing that I could do. And I was like, okay, so maybe I can just listen more, listen better. About two months go by, and I'm kind of having a similar thought where, okay, what are my strengths again? Because I had forgotten what my mom and my wife had said. And I was putting my baby girl down, my little girl, for the night, and she was drinking her bottle, and I was kind of just praying with God. I said, God, what are my strengths? What can I do to magnify what you need me to do for your children? And I remember having an immediate thought that went straight to my mom, my mom's comment about me being a good listener. And that was kind of a refreshing moment for me. I remembered that, and I was like, okay, what can I do with this? And then without much time after that, I remember this really pressing thought hit my mind that I should start a podcast. And not one that was me talking through all of my experiences and telling stories, because I'm not really one to do that, but it was a kind of an interview style podcast that I'd be doing. And all these ideas started to flood to my mind of, okay, this is somebody that I could talk to, and this is somebody that I could interview. And so I feel like when you get a spiritual prompting to one of the indicators that I kind of look to if the spiritual prompting is from God or not is obviously, one, is it good? And then two, do things feel like they align? And I just started to get all of these ideas of who I could interview, how I could set it up, what topics I could cover. And so things just felt like they started aligning, and now I've got a whole list of interviewees that I want to be interviewing. And I'm really excited about the future of this. Again, I'm not exactly sure where this podcast will go. Not really looking to get famous for this. That's not my goal. But ultimately, I just want to maybe help touch one life. And if that's my life or the person I'm interviewing, that's great. Ultimately, there's just so many people out there that need more spiritual momentum, that kind of like President Nelson talks about. And there's so many people going through hard times, challenges, and there's really, really hard times. The world continues to get more and more evil, and that means with more and more evil, there's more and more hardship. And so I feel like if I can produce some sort of if I can be the vessel to be able to produce some sort of light in this world, I hope I can shine that light. So I've had a couple of different thoughts as I've started to, prepare for this podcast and kind of laying the groundwork for it. And I realized that I've been prepared, not just with that I felt like I should, start a podcast, but I've had a few promptings that I've kept track of over the last year. And one of them was preparing for Christ's second coming. I remember my wife and I, we were both working at the time, and my mother-in-law would watch our baby girl as we would go both and work on Tuesdays. And so I was at the library at the end of a really long Tuesday, waiting for the clock to hit 6 so I could, go pick up Amelia from work and go see Alea. I didn't have any work left to do for the day. It was about 5 o'clock. So I dove into a couple podcasts by Bryce Dunford and clicked on one of his videos, and he's talking about understanding temple symbols, kind of starting from the basics. And he eventually, in his podcast, he talked about the number 7 being super important, and that it represented completion or, perfection. And he gives some examples of, it took 7 days to complete the earth, Naaman washed in the river 7 times. But then he also talked about how the earth would last for a period of 7,000 years in its current state before it's celestialized. And I was dumbfounded. He quoted Doctrine and Covenant 77, and I just said to myself, well, where in the world does it say that? So I went searching, and it's true. Doctrine and Covenant 77 says that the earth has a time period for 7,000 years. And, at the end of the day, who knows the math, but we really are in the last days. This is the 7th period that we're in, if it's a literal 7th period. But President Nelson talks about this all the time, that we really are in the last days, because in general conference, his general conference talk in 2024, where he speaks of his second coming, and in another conference where he said, time is running out. I started to think, at that point, what the second coming might look like. Being able to see Christ again for the first time in a long time, and how much joy I would feel. And in that moment, the Spirit touched my soul. We are closer than we think, and I need to prepare now, and more than I have, so I can see Christ at the last day with confidence. And I think that's another reason why I'm starting this podcast. I think we all need more spiritual momentum than we currently have, so we can prepare better for the second coming, because it is coming. So I'm wanted to touch on too, like why I'm calling the podcast Nourished. So a while back when I was 16, so this is before my mission, I decided that I wasn't going to serve a mission if I didn't have an answer to my prayers. And so one day, a youth leader of mine, we went through Alma 32 together, and it was talking about, experimenting upon the word and nourishing the roots, essentially, and nourishing your testimony. And that way it'll, start to swell within your breast. You'll feel the truth of it. And so I eventually, it took me a long time to get an answer. It took, relatively a long time. But for me, it was, a good amount of study every single day, and I stayed consistent. I read the scriptures, the Book of Mormon, for an hour a day for 3 or 4 months straight. And I eventually came back to my youth leader, and he's like, dude, have you felt anything so far? And before I could say no, this powerful, and there's kind of a connotation behind the word supernatural, but it was almost this supernatural feeling in my soul, because it wasn't from this world. I really felt like the Spirit touched my soul and testified of the truthfulness of the Book of Mormon and of Christ's church and his love for me. And so how I got my answers from, well, I guess the seed of it, how it started was I read Alma 32, and it talks about nourishing the word. So that's why I named the podcast Nourished, just because when I read Alma 32, that was kind of the seed of starting this whole thing. It was, okay, I need to experiment with the word, and then I need to nourish it. And that's what ultimately helped me get my answers, because I experimented with it. I put in the work and I nourished it. And so that's, I think, the theme of this whole podcast is, nourishing the word so you can get answers to your prayers, or just feeling nourished by, if I bring somebody on and they're going through a similar trial or challenge as you can feel nourished by somebody else's experience. So a lot of people, when they start podcasts, they kind of set a timeline on, I'm going to post every week, or I'm going to post every month. For me, I don't really have a timeline of what I'm going to be doing, because I do have a business that I own, and I have to dedicate a lot of time to that. I have a family to tend to and spend time with, and I love them more than just about anything. And so I've got to really dedicate my time there too. And so I will be, but I do want to dedicate a lot of time to this as well, because this is really important. It's, President Nelson said that the gathering of Israel is the most important thing, the most important work that we can be doing on earth right now. So I want to contribute to that in some sort of way. So I think above all, I love the gospel. I love God, and I love Christ. I'm excited to dive deep into other people's stories and get their perspectives on things, because I think it will really be beneficial for you, whoever's listening, and definitely for me. So I look forward to what's to come, and I guess I'll see you on the next episode.